In this B.Hooked tutorial, I'll walk you through the Baby Brights C2C or corner to corner baby blanket, a free pattern at BHooked.com using Paintbox Simply Aran yarn. Before we get started, be sure to visit bhooked.com/babybrights for the list of supplies, to see more photos of this project, and of course to find the pattern and color diagram. Everything you'll need to pair with this tutorial and finish your baby blanket. All right, now let's get to it. To start off our corner to corner pattern, what we need to do is make a slip knot, and chain 6. Now find the 4th chain from the hook. So I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I want to make a double crochet there. I'm just working in the back bump of my chain. And double crochet once into the remaining 2 chains. Okay, now with that, we have our first tile completed. So whenever we want to increase in the corner to corner pattern, we will always start by chaining 6. I will turn my work and find that 4th chain from the hook once again. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I will double crochet into that chain. Now you can work in whatever part of the chain you can. I personally like to catch those top 2 loops, and you'll make a double crochet. Now I have 2 chains remaining. I will make a double crochet in each of those remaining 2 chains. And this is what we're left with. Now find this chain here over on the other side. We will join with a slip stitch there. So just stick your hook right in the space, make a slip stitch, and there we have it. So this tile is now attached to this one, and we can make one more. This time we'll chain 3 because we're not at the beginning of an increase row, and I will make 3 double crochets in this chain space. And that's what it looks like at the end of our second row. Now, as you've probably seen from the photos, we work 2 rows in each color. We'll need to fasten on here, and what I like to do is do so by working it through the last 2 loops of the stitch, or basically finishing the last motion of the stitch. So since I have my double crochet completed, I'm just going to release those 2 loops. Just sort of fold that over, place it on your hook, and pull it through those 2 loops. Now when you get to the end of any row, we're always going to chain 6 when we're increasing. We'll turn our work and always find that 4th chain. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll insert our hook into that chain, and here's a little tip. We want to carry our non-working color up the side, and that will prevent us from having these big long floats, and it'll just make things look better. So to do that, once you have inserted your hook into that chain, simply take that non-working color and just loop it over your hook. We're not making a stitch with it or anything, we're just placing it over top so that I can catch it and secure it in my stitch. Now we're still working with double crochet, so I will just yarn over and pull through the chain. You can see I've caught that non-working strand. I'll finish the double crochet as normal. Now we have 2 chains left. I will make a double crochet in each of those 2 chains, making sure that I'm catching that non-working strand. So to do that, you'll always just make sure it's resting on top of your hook when you work your stitch. And the last chain here, I will insert my hook, catching that non-working strand so it's sitting right on top. Finish my double crochet. Now I know this is kind of a pain, it's a lot to hold on to, but we're just doing it for 3 stitches at the beginning of this first row when we transition to the new color. Now if you prefer, you could always trim your ends and just weave them in as you go. Now here's where our repeat begins. We will join with a slip stitch to that chain 3 space, chain 3, and make 3 double crochets in that space. Now here I have one more tile with that chain 3, that's what I'm looking for. I'll join with a slip stitch there. I'm still increasing, so I will keep going. Chain 3, 3 double crochets, and since I have no more tiles to join with, that means I'm at the end of the row. Now you'll notice we're increasing our number of tiles by 1 every single row. We started with 1, then we had 2, now we had 3, and you can guess that at the end of the next row, we'll have 4. Let's look at how to do this next row one more time. Remember, when we are increasing, we will always chain 6 at the beginning of the row. Make a double crochet in the 4th, 5th, and 6th chain from the hook. And now we can fill out the row. We have a tile here. I've got my chain 3 space. You'll join with a slip stitch there. This is the repeat, by the way. Chain 3. Make 3 double crochets in that chain 3 space. And I am still increasing, so I will continue with one more chain 3 and 3 double crochets in the chain 3 space. Now as you're working your last double crochet, don't work it all the way. Leave it to the point where you have 2 loops on your hook, and we're going to drop our main color, or pick up color A, make a yarn over, and pull through those 2 loops with a new color because we're ready to start working in color A for 2 more rows. Now let's see how to carry that yarn just one more time so it's fresh in your mind. We will chain 6 at the beginning of this row because we're still increasing. Find your 4th chain, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just go ahead and yarn over. Place your hook in that chain. Grab your non-working color and just loop it over the top of your hook. Now I kind of just hold it back here at the back. That way I've got some tension on it and I don't lose it when I yarn over with color A to finish the double crochet. Then once it's attached, you can let it go and you'll secure it as you work a double crochet in the next 2 chains. All right, so you're probably getting the hang of the corner to corner increase stitch repeat. Now that you've seen the stitch pattern repeat as we're increasing here, let's talk about the color pattern repeat. Now you already know that we're working 2 rows in each color, but you'll need to know how to cycle through color A through color D as we work our way to the middle of our blanket. So I went ahead and worked up just a little bit more, and now I want to demonstrate how to fasten off color A when you no longer want to use it. We're going to keep our main color attached. So what I've done here is I've made it to the end of my 2nd row. I finished my last double crochet with my main color. So that one is now my active color, but I don't need to carry this. I don't need to go through that extra work. So we can fasten off, leave yourself a long enough tail that you can weave in later. and we'll continue with our stitch pattern. We won't need to pick up color B for 2 more rows. All right, now what I've done here was worked up 2 more rows in my main color. I'm ready to make that color transition. I have worked my last double crochet just part of the way so that I can add my new color and finish the stitch at the same time. Here's a little tip here. We're not changing anything from when we first added our main color. The technique is the same. Now, one thing you could do if you choose to do so, you can make a slip knot before you add it on. Place that loop on your hook and pull it through these 2 loops. Then from here, the rest of the stitch pattern is the same throughout the increases. We'll chain 6, we will work over our yarn, basically carry it up the side as we go along. Now let's refer to the color pattern diagram so that you have an idea of what to do before we look at how to stop increasing and work on the next section. This is the color diagram you'll find over on the pattern page. Once again, that's bhooked.com/babybrights. And you'll see the color pattern repeat here. We've already discussed how we are changing colors every 2 rows. Well, this is the way that we're going to change them. Now, one thing you'll notice from this diagram is that I'm working it slightly backwards in the tutorial, and that's just because I didn't want to start with white, which is a harder color for you to see on camera. So you'll notice here that you will start with 3 groups or 3 color rows in color A, follow that up with 3 groups or 3 color rows of color B, then color C, and color D. That'll get you to about the middle of the blanket, and you'll cycle through in the reverse order. You'll start again with color C, color B, and finish up with color A. Now, the white squares that you see are your main color, and you can use whatever color you choose. I thought white worked really well with the colors here, but of course you can get as creative as you want with this pattern. One other thing I do want to point out is that each block in this color diagram represents 1 tile worked in your stitch pattern. All right, once you've reached the point in your pattern where you no longer have to increase, you're going to start decreasing. This is what we'll do. I need to transition to my new color because I'm at the end of this 2nd row. So like before, I'm just going to finish that last stitch with the new color. I will turn my work, and in order to carry the yarn, what I found to be the most effective way is to hold the 2 strands together and work with them as if they were one. So at the beginning of every single decrease row, we're going to slip stitch along this top edge. So insert your hook into that next stitch. I'm going to grab both of those strands, pull it through, and then pull that through the loop on my hook. Then I'll do that again, stick my hook into the next stitch, grab the 2 loops, pull it through the stitch. I'm going to pull it through both of these. Remember, we're just treating this as if it were 1 strand of yarn. We'll do that 1 more time. I'm going to insert my hook into that chain 3 space, but this time, instead of pulling up both loops, I want to just pull up the color that I want to use. In this case, it's going to be the main color, so I'll pull that through the chain 3 space, and again through those 2 loops. So that's one way you can carry your yarn up the side. I found this works out really well. And although you can see this color transition here, we work over this quite a bit when we're doing the border, and you can hardly tell that it's there. So now I will leave color B here just hanging in the background, and I'll continue with my pattern. Well, from here on out, it's not any different than what we saw while increasing. So the difference between our increasing and our decreasing rows is how we start and how we finish. So I will chain 3, make 3 double crochets. I'll work this normal repeat until I get to the end of the row, and I'll show you what's different at the end of a decreasing row. Now for our decreasing rows, what we'll do at the end is join with a slip stitch to this chain 3 space. We're used to doing this, and that's it. That's where we'll stop. Normally we would chain 3 and add 3 more double crochets to make it bigger, but this way we're making it smaller. So from here, you'll turn your work, and because we're decreasing, we always start by slip stitching. So I will insert my hook into each of these 3 double crochets and do a slip stitch, just kind of working down the edge because I need to get to that chain 3 space. And once you get to the chain 3 space, that kicks off your normal repeat. Chain 3, 3 double crochets, and you'll continue on until you get to the end of your row. All right, now here's what you do when you need to add a new color and you're on these decreasing rows. I'm just going to go ahead and trim this color here because I want to show you how to add in a new color and where to do so. So I've finished this row. I'll turn my work, and just like before, I will slip stitch down my row of double crochets. And when you get to your chain 3 space, you'll insert your hook into that chain 3 space, but instead of pulling up your working color, we'll pull up a new color. I'll create a slip knot, place that on my hook, pull it through that chain 3 space, and then through the loop on my hook. And I can just drop that main color and continue with my next color with my familiar stitch repeat. So now refer back to your color diagram to get you through the last half of your blanket, get through all of your decreases, and the next thing we'll look at is the border. Now when you're ready to add the border, you'll grab your border color, create a slip knot. So here I'm starting along the bottom edge. I have that back bump of the chain that I'm working into. So I will join, pull that through, make a chain 1. We're not counting this chain 1 as a stitch. It's really just to fasten it on. So I will crochet in that same stitch, make a single crochet. Now we'll follow this rule of thumb throughout this first row of the border. What we're doing here is cleaning up the edges, and for each one of our tiles, we'll have 3 single crochets. So I have 1 single crochet for this first double crochet. I will have 1 single crochet for the next 2 as well. Next, I've come to another tile, and this is where I have the double crochet is sort of off to the side. So I want to add 3 single crochets, and I will work that around this double crochet stitch. Now I've come to the next tile, and you guessed it, 1 single crochet for every stitch. And that's going to be the trend until you get to the end of this row. Now this is what it'll look like when you get to the end of that row and we're ready to continue. So all I will do is rotate it and work my 3 single crochets for each of these 3 double crochets in the tile. And when you get to that next tile where your double crochet is sort of sideways there, you'll make 3 single crochets. So we're averaging 3 single crochets for each one of our tiles in this border round, and because we have 44 tiles to our project, that means we will have 132 stitches for each side of the border. Any opportunity you have to catch a float when you're working through this round of your border, it's a good idea to do so. You'll lock it in place and you'll help hide any contrasting colors. Now you'll just continue working in this fashion until you get back to where you joined. We will join with a slip stitch to our first single crochet. When you've made it to the end of your round, you'll join with a slip stitch to your first single crochet. And now we'll change things up a little bit. We don't want to fasten off, but we're no longer working in rounds at this point. What we'll do is add on a section one side at a time, sort of like log cabin style, if you're familiar with that technique. So we'll chain 10. I'll find my second chain and half double crochet into that stitch and make 1 half double crochet into each remaining chain. You'll have a total of 9 half double crochet. When you're finished with that, you'll find your next single crochet and slip stitch there. And now we finished that first row. From here, your repeat begins. We'll chain 1, we'll turn our work, but we're really just turning this extra little piece we're adding on. And that chain 1 will not count as a stitch. So I will make a half double crochet in the back loop of that first stitch. And then repeat that 1 half double crochet in the back loop only of every stitch. You'll have a total of 9. Then from here we will chain 1, we'll turn our work again, still working in the back loop only, and that chain 1 does not count as a stitch. I'll half double crochet in the back loop of my first stitch for this new little row, and 1 half double crochet in the back loop of every stitch. And when you get to the end of this row, we need to slip stitch to attach it to our blanket. Now that we finished up that first row, the one where we just slip stitched to the very next stitch, we'll only do that at the beginning. From here on out, we will skip a stitch and then slip stitch in the next. And then you'll repeat. Chain 1, turn your work, work your half double crochet in the back loop only. You'll repeat this until you get to the end of this row of your blanket. So now I've made it to my last stitch of this side of the blanket. I'm just going to join with a slip stitch to the very last single crochet. So this is another instance where I'm not skipping in between these joins. So we have 1 at one end, we had 1 down here at the very beginning. Now from here we can fasten off. And we'll notice we have just a little bit of ruffle, and that's exactly what we want. Now from here you'll flip your blanket over, work that same thing along the opposite edge, and then you'll have 2 sides to your border. From there you'll fasten on over in this corner, work all the way over, flip it, you'll fasten on here, work the stitch pattern all the way over, keeping in mind that on the very first and the very last stitch, we're not going to skip a stitch when we join with the slip stitch, but everywhere in between we will. Now the last thing we'll have a look at here is how to weave in these ends. Thread it on your darning needle, and I like to run it underneath the row of stitches for each tile. And I'll state the obvious here, since we have some color transitions, it's always best if you can weave in the end along a portion of stitches that matches the same color. I like to go back and forth and be a little bit messy, so I'm sort of splitting the fibers. That helps it to stay in place. And you'll just repeat that for your other ends. I hope you've enjoyed this B.Hooked tutorial, and I hope you will share your progress photos with me somewhere on social. You can find me on Instagram at B.Hooked, and you can also post directly to my Facebook page at B.Hooked Crochet. Please give this video a thumbs up if you found this tutorial valuable, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the show. That way you can see another tutorial as soon as it's available, and you can watch an episode of B.Hooked TV every single week. Until next time, I'm your host, Brittany, and keep on hooking, my friend.